And we continue at 2:07 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios, the loosest slots in the Coachella Valley. Mr. Randy Wags at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, I just got an email that I have to address. Dave writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Missed drop opportunity at the city council. Sir, I don't have your phone number from the city council meeting, but a great way for you to give out the phone numbers at KABC. You guys are great. I think he's right.
I have no idea what your phone number is.
Goes along with my 2 new Krikorian drops that are on the newly expanded wall.
Get out.
And
go to the first caller on the phone now.
He seems angry all the time.
Wouldn't you be if you were president of that city council?
Oh, I would be a boiling cauldron of rage.
Get out.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a syndicated columnist and author of the book, A Watchman in the Night, What I've Seen Over 50 Years Reporting on America. Available online at Amazon.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Cal Thomas. Cal Thomas, welcome.
Hey, John. Good to be with you again. Thanks.
Likewise. Thanks so much for stopping by on this Friday. Let's start.
What do we talk about? There's nothing going on.
I know. Well, let's start with the breaking news that just crossed my computer screen here. It's being reported by Jake Sherman, who's the founder of Punchbowl News and NBC News. And I'll just read you the tweet and get your reaction to it. It seems entirely possible, if not probable, that not one person in the House Republican Conference could win the speakership with GOP votes only, meaning the Democrats are going to be able to pick the next Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
John, I think this is a disgrace. This is worse than watching sausage being made. So many of these fringe Republicans are fundraising off of this. They are not looking at the bigger picture. They're claiming to stand for principles that they believe in. But look, the Democrats control the Senate and the White House. There's no way that any meaningful legislation is going to get through the House of Representatives. And not to pick a speaker with all this going on in Israel and the economy and the threat of another government shutdown in November is irresponsible, to put it kindly.
Cal, you have covered Washington, D.C. for, as your book says, 50 years. You've done it in print. You've done it in broadcast. You've done it in a variety of platforms, traveled around the country giving speeches. It seems to me that the type of person that gets involved in politics is different now than in the past. And I say that in part because of the media age that we live in, where television makes celebrities out of people who find ways to end up on television all the time. Yeah. And you look at the players involved in this. You look at Matt Gaetz, who clearly has aspirations to run for governor of Florida, some other higher office, and he needs to raise his profile, raise his name ID to run statewide in a very big, very expensive state with a lot of different media markets. And he's been filling in on Newsmax as a primetime host when one of their hosts is out sick. And I don't even know how as an elected you can do that, but that's what he's been doing. Then you have Nancy Mace down in South Carolina, who shows up on cable news every time I turn it on all of the channels. And then a couple of days ago, she showed up to a closed-door meeting wearing a scarlet letter, talking to all of the news crews outside the room before she went in. You look at Lauren Boebert, who I just found out has a GED. She did not graduate high school, and she's a grandmother at the age of 36, appearing on cable news every opportunity she has, showing off the twins. I say to myself, when I look at these people and the way they're behaving, they're not acting like legislators who are elected to run the government. They're acting like very high-maintenance actors and actresses who are auditioning for other roles, and they're using this platform as a way to get the job that they want.
Well, John, that's a great analysis, and I completely agree with it. But the ultimate responsibility lies on the voters. We elect these people. And if we don't like their behavior, personal or political, we have the opportunity to throw them out. I think it's, again, a disgrace what is happening here. When you look back at what Newt Gingrich did in the Republican Revolution, grabbing back a majority in the House of Representatives for the first time in the mid-'80s, first time in 40 years, they had to go on a retreat because they weren't used to actually winning, and they had to figure out how to govern. Republicans are terrible at this, and we've got to do something, we being conservatives and whatever label you want to put on people. If we don't like these people and the way they're behaving, then we got to vote them out. You're absolutely right. A lot of this is positioning and posturing, and for the next office or get me reelected or raise my profile and raise more money. It's not about we, the people. Most Americans don't care about this goofball stuff that's going on in Washington. They care about high gas prices, close to $7 a gallon in L.A., I saw recently. They care about high food prices. They care about the open border. And we don't even know the kinds of people that are coming into this country. I suspect a good number of them are terrorists and Iranians. Iran has bragged that they're sneaking agents into the country. We've got some serious problems here, and these clowns are making it all about themselves.
I don't think they're bright enough to think it through this far, but I think ultimately what they actually want is to be in the minority. Because if you're in the minority, you can be a critic and you don't actually have to worry about governing. If you're in the majority, you actually have to pass budgets. You actually have to write legislation. You actually have to participate in the committee process. You have to meet with constituents. You have to meet with lobbyists. You have to cut deals. I don't think they have any interest in any of that. I really don't.
Well, you've got a good point. You may be right. But, we haven't passed budgets on time in a number of years, even when the Democrats were in control. Remember, we're supposed to cut out pork for a while. There were not going to be any additions without going through committee and regular order. Well, all the pork is back now. You can go online to Citizens Against Government Waste and some of these other websites. Everybody knows that Social Security and Medicare need to be reformed. But, of course, the Democrats have demagogued this issue for years and said, don't elect Republicans or they'll take away your Social Security and Medicare. It's all a lie. They know it's a lie, but it works. It's worked for over 40 years, and Republicans have never been able to respond to these charges. We've got to get our financial house in order. No nation has ever been able to survive with this level of debt, $33 trillion. No nation has ever been able to survive without controlling its borders. And if you lose a sense of a shared moral value system, that's something else that brings the nation down from within. We've got all three of those things going on at the same time, and these characters in Washington aren't even paying attention to any of them.
How is it, with her slim majority, that Nancy Pelosi was able to keep her nuts in line and get them all voting together? And I say that because, look, we talked about some of the Republican nuts, but the Democrats now have people pulling fire alarms to delay votes. They're teeing off on the Jews on social media. They're doing all kinds of crazy things right and left. But when they were in the majority, she got them all to vote together consistently. How did she do it and Kevin McCarthy couldn't?
She has a strong arm, and, she can actually herd cats. And she did it by a number of ways. Rewards, if you vote with me on this bill, we'll see that you get a committee assignment, or we'll see that you don't get primaried, or there can be penalties if you don't go along. She was very good at this. I knew her a little bit. She used to be my next-door neighbor some years ago, and she's a very pleasant person, but she's a no-nonsense Democrat Pole from Baltimore, and she knows how to play the game. Republicans are scared of their own shadow. They are afraid with a bad editorial in the New York Times or the Washington Post. They're afraid they won't get invited to the right parties. They really don't know how to govern well, and you've got to start with a vision. Remember George H.W. Bush mocked what he called the vision thing. You've got to tell people what you're for and how you intend to get there and why it will benefit them and promote the general welfare. That is an essence of politics. And, of course, Republicans start as a disadvantage, as you suggested, with the media on the other side. So they've got to find a way to overcome this. And this what's going on right now. And we understand that Jim Jordan is back in the mix for House Speaker, but they still don't have the votes. This is terrible. This is given the Democrats are going to be laughing their heads off of this, or the other end, and because they're doing the Republicans are doing their job for them.
Nancy Pelosi is no longer Speaker. She's still a member of the House, but no longer Speaker, and was recently here in Southern California for an event with her former colleague in the House, who's now the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. And Nancy Pelosi was treated like a queen, as she is whenever she appears in front of Democratic audiences. Yet you look at the Republican side, and for Republicans, and I'm not talking about the people in Washington, I'm talking about the people out in America who vote in Republican primaries and are part of that world that puts Republicans in office. And almost universally, it doesn't matter which one you talk about, they despise Republican leadership. Whether it was Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell in the Senate, they didn't like Paul Ryan, they didn't like John Boehner, they don't like any of the Republican leaders. Yet the people in the trenches, the Democratic voters, seem to be in love with theirs. Why do you think that is?
Well, Democrats, of course, are the party of government. This is all they have. This is all they care about. This is their only objective, to get elected, to stay in office, to spend more money, to tax the so-called rich, to spread the wealth around, as Barack Obama famously said. And that's all they have. Republicans have other interests besides politics mostly. And when you have a House divided, as no pun intended, or maybe the pun is intended, it can't stand for long. So Republicans have to up their game. It doesn't mean they have to embrace all politics all the time, but they've got to win the argument. This is something that we who are conservatives have not done in a long time. We're always responding to what the Democrats and the left and the media say. We have to prove we're not racist. We have to prove we're not various kinds of phobes. We have to prove that we do care about the poor. The difference between us and the liberals is we want to make them unpoor. The left wants to continue to addict them to government so they'll continue to get reelected. You look at these big cities. You mentioned L.A., San Francisco, Chicago, Baltimore, New York. Look at the crime. They're all run by Democratic mayors, and in most cases they have Democrat governments. But the people continue to vote for them, even though, people are getting murdered, the looting. Look at Los Angeles and some of the pictures we've seen all over the country now, and San Francisco, looting, stores are closing, they can't afford to stay open anymore, security guards won't detain any of the looters, and it just seems that we are in a period of moral chaos in the country. But as long as you vote for these people, you're going to get the same results. Wake up, America.
We're speaking with Cal Thomas, author of the book A Watchman in the Night, What I've Seen Over 50 Years Reporting on America, available online at Amazon.com. Cal, I had a conversation with a friend earlier this week, a friend of mine who works in the news business, who is, let's just call him a partisan Democrat. And he said, and this was a revelation to him, I can't believe all the anti-Semitism I'm seeing right now on the left. I didn't know it existed like this, and seemed to be genuinely surprised, genuinely shocked at the reaction that he's seeing, particularly on social media and on MSNBC, I guess. And by the way, there are reports out now that they benched 3 of their anchors who have been particularly bad on this subject. But he was genuinely surprised and shocked to see the open anti-Semitism coming from the left. Your thoughts?
Well, he hadn't been paying attention, because it's been out there. Whenever you have a Jewish person or somebody who is pro-Israel speak on a college campus, there have been demonstrators show up, and this has been going on for some time. But the thin veneer that has covered much of this anti-Semitism in America has been torn off and has been radically exposed because of what has happened in the last week with the attacks by Hamas on Israel, the taking of hostages, beheading of babies, and all of the rest. And then you have Harvard, the president of Harvard, putting out some kind of lukewarm statement. And then when she was denounced, including by Larry Summers, the former president of Harvard, she puts out a much stronger statement. Well, I wrote a piece and I said, believe the first statement. That's what she really means. The hatred of the Jewish people, the anti-Semitism, not only in this country, but the return of it to Europe, which certainly had an experience with this in the past that brought on World War II is really astounding. But it's been revealed now, and the question is, how is it going to be addressed, and how are we going to deal with it? It's just shocking to me that so many American universities, many of them, especially in the Northeast, founded by Christians and people who train missionaries to go out and do good work around the world, has now been taken over not just by the radical left, but by anti-Semites. It is a disgrace, and it's disgusting. And all right-thinking Americans, whatever their background or religious beliefs are, ought to denounce it with no qualification.
I'm going to ask you a question I've asked a couple of guests on this program earlier this week, because I've genuinely been wrestling with it in my own head as to what I would do if I were in this particular circumstance. But we've seen these rallies on college campuses all over in favor of Hamas, in favor of what Hamas did in Israel, including here at Long Beach State in Los Angeles County. And I'm thinking to myself, if you're the president of that university, that is possibly the most professionally embarrassing thing that will ever happen to you in your career. And clearly there's something that you and your institution, in what you're teaching them, that's gone very, very wrong. It's gone to a very bad place. What you're doing is not working. Whatever it is that you're trying to convey to them, assuming that you're trying to educate them in good faith, has gone terribly wrong. What do you do when you have students in your quad protesting in favor of Hamas if you're the president of that university?
Well, I just read yesterday there's a big hedge fund manager in New York who has suggested that if they can get the names of these protesters, none of them, if they're in law school or want a big job in the financial market in New York, should be hired. Well, that's one avenue. But I'll tell you what I prefer. I prefer a forced requirement. We have requirements in universities. You can't get a degree until you take such and such a course. Well, now we're overloaded with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a joke in itself. But I think some of these students ought to be forced to take a class where they have to listen to Holocaust survivors' stories, where they have to listen to persecuted Jews, where they have to listen to family members of people who have been killed by Hamas and other terrorists, schools that have been bombed, forced to listen to this sort of stuff because they're getting only a one-sided view, whether it be at the universities or through social media or some of these anti-Semitic websites that people visit, and they're not getting the other side. So I would much prefer a conversion to a punishment. If we have to have punishment, leave that last, but I'd rather have people converted to the proper outlook on Israel and the Middle East and the Jewish people than I would just to punish them.
I'll tell you, if there's any industry out there that exists that just has zero capacity for self-reflection, it's education. They're teaching the kids how to read. The kids can't read. They just keep on doing what they're doing. They're teaching the kids math. The kids can't do math. They just keep doing what they're doing. They're teaching the kids about civics and world affairs and history, and they're cheering on Hamas, and they just keep doing what they're doing. If you were making cars and your cars were rolling over and you just kept doing what you were doing, you would be sued out of existence. Yet in public education, they have no problem just keeping their foot on that gas pedal, not giving a damn what parked cars they hit.
That's a good analogy. Yep, that's true. But many of them, like Harvard, but not just Harvard, have these huge endowments. But they get a lot of money from the government. They keep going up in tuition every time they do. I call them re-education camps. I mean, these are indoctrination centers. What amazes me is that how many people willingly send their kids into these schools, starting with the public schools, where you have drag queen story time and the rest. And as you say, we are below much of the rest of the world in math and reading and science. I just did this column yesterday looking at California, and California is the number one state for illiteracy in the country. That is absolutely phenomenal to me. How can that happen in a state like California? But it does. And again, the public schools are the last monopoly in the country. Everything has been broken up. The phone companies have been broken up. Monopoly on airlines have been broken up. But the public schools are the last one. We need competition. We need school choice. 37 states now have some form of school choice. It needs to be national. But, of course, the Democrats don't want it because they get all these campaign contributions from the teachers' unions. But we can't continue. Again, California's got this system, I don't have to tell you this, which pushes people through to graduation, whether they qualify or not. That's dooming a kid to a failed life. I mean, we got to get on the ball about this. We can't afford another generation of kids who can't read, can't do math, don't know anything except DEI, and that is not going to get them a decent job or give them a decent life.
Cal Thomas, author of the book A Watchman in the Night, What I've Seen Over 50 Years Reporting on America. You can get that at Amazon.com and follow Cal on Twitter at Cal Thomas. Cal Thomas, thanks so much for stopping by with us on this Friday.
Always a pleasure, John. Thanks very much.
Likewise. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to the podcast at 3:01 or whenever my voice goes out, that is easy to do.
That's right. Just go to the website, KABC.com, click on podcasts, or you can go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe, or the easiest way ever, the new KABC app. Search for KABC AM in the App Store, and that's the Apple App Store or the Android App Store, and it's the best way to listen live whenever and wherever you are. In case you're outside of the AM radio listening audience, we got people listening around the world. You can listen live that way. You can also download all the podcasts. It works on CarPlay. It is fantastic. You will love it so much, it'll make you want to kick a trash can.
From.
Oh, dear. Biden just fell again going up the stairs.
Oh, no.
Twice.
Grampy Joe, say it ain't so.
Excuse me.
And he's wearing the aviators, too. Maybe he needs to clean those aviators.
He's a lion, dog-faced pony soldier.
Randy, we've got some housekeeping items to talk about.
Well, this is very exciting. Just as we were coming back from commercial break, I got a text from our buddy Jenny in sales, who is letting us know that we've got another Gelson's remote coming up in the month of November. The details will be coming soon, but we're going to be celebrating the grand opening of the brand new Gelson's in West L.A. on Olympic and Bundy. So when we give you the date, make sure to take the day off from work because that one's got a huge wine bar, and we're going to enjoy ourselves.
Now, if OJ were still living in the neighborhood, do you think he'd come by for the broadcast?
I sure hope he wouldn't.
What's going on, America?
All right, that's a perfect segue into the KABC Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, the 2 p.m. edition of the Crime Blotter takes us to the San Fernando Valley.
That's right. A neighborhood in Valley Glen has had it up to here with a crazy fire-starting, machete-wielding homeless person that no one can do anything about. For more, here's Fox 11.
Residents in Valley Glen fed up with the homeless crisis there. We spoke to neighbors who say the problem has begun again, and they are open to solutions such as the one just proposed by Governor Newsom. Christina Gonzalez has a story you'll see only on Fox 11.
And is violent. He hit someone with a pipe in the head the other night.
Whoa.
My God.
She's talking.
Is that not a crime in L.A. anymore?
Being hit with a pipe?
She's talking about a man living in a ramshackle collection of, for lack of a better description, stuff.
Christina Gonzalez has seen it all, and when she doesn't know how to describe what this man is living in, that is saying something.
She's talking about a man living in a ramshackle collection of, for lack of a better description, stuff scattered on the edge of a Valley Glen park Fox 11 featured earlier this year. Residents complain about homeless encampment fires and shootings captured on Ring videos.
Jesus.
That sounds like it's not even in this country.
That sounds like Gaza.
Yeah.
The park is being cleaned up, with the people now moving to other locations, including right here, where this man stays. Residents sharing home Ring videos of the fire department responding to fires, photos of the burned copper wires. One video of a person running to their door, supposedly fleeing from the man asking them to call 911.
Jesus Christ.
So wait, he starts the fire and then starts asking people to call 911?
No, that was a resident running towards his Ring doorbell asking someone to call 911.
Oh, I see.
Assuming
Okay.
that the crazy guy was chasing him. That's what I think was happening there. Like that guy.
That would make more sense.
There's more.
This individual had walked all the way down to the other end of the park with about a 4-foot-long machete and just swinging it. We call police because they ask us to call police.
That's just calisthenics.
Wait, this isn't Buena Park, and this isn't medieval times.
And so that they have some kind of a record of what's happening. But it's just entrenched.
So the best way to do this is to actually give you a close-up look at this. So let's go. We have permission from the owner to go back here. Come on. I have to climb.
She's peeping at the homeless encampment from a neighbor's backyard.
Oh, the homeless guy may not like that.
I have to climb a ladder to get close enough safely. Now, he continues doing whatever he's doing and doesn't want to talk to us. But from here, you can see he's on parkland. LA city officials confirm every time they come to move him, he jumps over the fence to Caltrans property. And when Caltrans comes in to get his stuff, we're told he moves it back into the park.
Okay, think about this for a second. You go to school to study government. You get a master's degree in public administration. You're working for Caltrans. You're working for some government agency. And this crazy homeless arsonist is outsmarting you.
The piles on top of dumping prohibited signs.
He's like Quasimodo in Hunchback of Notre Dame. He knows on which side of the fence to invoke sanctuary.
We have a special enforcement zone that doesn't seem to be enforced.
John, is that another thing that's the opposite of what it's called?
Of course.
This man is clearly mentally challenged.
So they like hearing Governor Newsom announce legislation that, if approved by voters, would borrow billions of dollars through bonds to pay for mental health facilities.
That's not going to get the machete out of that guy's hand.
No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. The courts have made mental institutions just something that's not a viable option. If it costs $500,000 a year to house someone in a mental institution, we will go broke if we put all of the crazy people back in the institutions. What the courts have done, whether they know it or not, is they've made it so that jail is the only option. But, John, it's inhumane. You can't put them in prison. Yeah, watch me. That's where they belong. If it's too expensive to put them in mental institutions and the courts say that's not an option, fine. Put them in prison. Get them away from the rest of us. You can't start fires.
And not just for people on the streets.
I know plenty of people with schizophrenic family members and people who really need help. There's not enough space.
These people need help. They refuse help. And they've got to be given it.
In Valley.
That guy really only had the one good line about Quasimodo, and they shouldn't have gone back to him for a second one.
No. You got his A material. Move on.
So that's what's going on in Valley Glen.
Well, who knew, Randy? It would end up being yet another very busy news week.
It has been nonstop. I mean, just in the last hour, Jim Jordan got nominated to be the next person to try to be speaker. And then 5 minutes after that, he doesn't have the votes.
And, of course, you have all of the breaking news going on right now in the Middle East, where apparently Gaza is either currently being bombed or expected to be bombed. I know there were evacuation notices that were given to the UN and other organizations, and that, of course, is a developing situation. And then you have all the chaos going on back here in Los Angeles with our district attorney, who has been an absolute destroyer of public safety, who is expected to announce tomorrow that he is seeking yet another 4-year term as district attorney to inflict more damage on the people of Los Angeles.
Quite frankly.
And if he's doing this event in public, he might not like what he sees because there are a lot of very pissed off people in Los Angeles County that can't believe that George Gascon, who sticks his nose into every single thing that has nothing to do with him, has yet to condemn Hamas.
Now, Randy, I know sports is your department, but I want to leave you today with a statistic regarding sports that I think is an important one.
What's that?
The Angels won exactly the same number of playoff games this season as the Dodgers.
That is true.
That's it for us today. We'll see you on Monday at noon for another live and local edition of The John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.